যারা এই মুহূর্তে আমাদের সাথে সংযুক্ত আছেন দাশেনকোঙের আজকের আলাপচারিতায় সবাইকে সাদর সম্ভাষণ জানাচ্ছি আমাদের সাথে যুক্ত হওয়ার জন্য। আজকের এই আলাপচারিতায় আমরা আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়েছি দুজন বিশিষ্ট ব্যক্তি। 1971 সালে আমাদের স্বাধীনতার জন্য সুদূর যুক্তরাজ্যে বিশেষ ভূমিকা রেখেছিলেন, কি করেননি তারা সেই সময়টাতে। তো viewers, I'm welcome today in our special show, and the guest, the British national Paul and Alan Connett. Now they're based in US, and in 71 they played a significant role to raise the voice for the independence of Bangladesh. In 1971, 9 months time, the Bengali people lived in over there, and along with all the non-Bengalis, British people, politicians, social workers, students, everyone come together, and there was a slogan, and mostly loudly spoke slogan is "Stop Genocide, Support Bangladesh, Recognize Bangladesh." We are welcome in the show Mr. Paul and Alan Connett.
Hello, Joy Bangla.
Joy Bangla. Paul, I'm so excited, Alan, as well. Today I'm really excited because the last 12 years, almost 12 years, I'm just hunting you so many ways, searching you. And I want to thank Mr. Mofidul Haq, the trustee of Bangladesh Liberation War Museum based in Dhaka, for connecting me with you. And my research was absolutely incomplete without getting you. Welcome to the show, Mr. Paul and Alan Connett.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, Paul and Alan. Now, I'd like to, I think you'll be more happy to see two of video clips based on 1971 in UK, and our viewers will get some clear idea in 71 how our people and all the people around the world come forward to support, raise the voice to getting the international attention to stop genocide happened in East Pakistan. And now we are going to watch two videos. One is in Bengali, another one is in English. Bengali one is produced by Project London 71. It was the produce for the reason is in photography exhibition were held in Bangladesh 2016 and 2017. And this one is in Bengali and another one in English. After the show, I think so our viewer will get some clear idea how it works, and you will memorize your days in London. Thank you.
একদিন ডাক এসেছিল, বঙ্গোপসাগর তরঙ্গিত হয়ে সেই ডাক আছড়ে পড়েছিল টেমসের তীরে। কি ভীষণ আবেগে সেদিন হেঁটেছিল তারা এক হয়ে মিছিলে মিছিলে। উত্তাল বিলেতের রাজপথ যেন এক টুকরো বাংলাদেশ। একদিন ডাক এসেছিল লড়বার, বহুমাত্রিক সে লড়াইয়ের ময়দানে যার যা আছে তাই নিয়ে প্রাণের উচ্ছ্বাসে ভেসেছিল মহাপ্রাণ। পূর্বপুরুষের সেই সব অবদান কালের গর্ভে হারাতে পারে না কখনো।
As events that winter in far-off East Pakistan moved steadily towards full-scale war, I remember as a young teenager joining the marches and demonstrations taking place in London in support of independence. When news of the Pakistani army massacre of students and others in Dhaka was broadcast on the BBC, passions in East London and among other Bengalis in Britain ran high.
We demonstrated in front of the Pakistan High Commission with great strength, and it became clear to us that it is no more a civil action, it is a war. Every city in this country started forming action groups. From that point onward, we started organizing ourselves nationwide, and that gave birth to the Council for the People's Republic of Bangladesh in UK.
Fighting against the worst repression of the human race that the world has seen since the days of Hitler.
We got a tremendous response from the British public as well. However, our people, in order to help people at home, they donated money. They joined the demonstration. Fortunately, the people from one single district, the district of Sylhet, produced 90% of the liberation workers in this country. And their contribution can never be forgotten. History will always remember. Bangladesh is forever in debt to the people of this country for lending us the platform from where we launched our activities.
As the civil war in East Pakistan grew ever more bloody, London became the overseas focus of attempts to mobilize world opinion into recognizing an independent Bangladesh and stopping the genocide.
এতক্ষণ আপনারা যে ভিডিওটি দেখছিলেন, আমরা আশা করছি যে 1971 সালে সুদূর বিলেতে কিভাবে আমাদের মানুষজন বাংলাদেশের স্বাধীনতার সমর্থনে দাঁড়িয়েছিলেন। তো আমরা আবার আসছি। Welcome to the show, Mr. Paul and Alan Connett.
Thank you. Thank you.
You find few of your faces on the second video. I think so you're approaching that time in towards 10 Downing Street.
Yes.
House after the gathering.
Yes, these videos bring so many memories back from those years. I should explain that Ellen and I had already been involved with a couple of campaigns which made us ready for Bangladesh. In 1967, 68, we were both involved in the Vietnam peace movement to stop the war in Vietnam, which was dreadful. And we didn't know each other then. Then in 1968, we met in another campaign in New York City called the American Committee to Keep Biafra Alive. And that went on for 2 horrible years where the Biafrans, which was the former Eastern Nigeria, were starved into submission. And they lost that war. And that's why we don't hear much about Biafra today, because they lost. We hear about Bangladesh because you won. But anyway, it prepared us. When Biafra fell, we soon after that, we got married in New York City and then came back to Europe. And in London, we met up with a lot of people that had been fighting or working for Biafra. And it was a remarkable coalition of people, left and right, many different countries, a very precious coalition. It wasn't political, it wasn't ideological, it was humanitarian. It was for human beings and what shouldn't happen to human beings. And we formed a little group called International Conscience in Action. One, we tried to keep an eye on what happened to Biafra. And the good news is they weren't massacred. That was very good news. The other thing we wanted to do was to make sure that if anything like this happened again, where the own country, the government of a country turned its military weapons onto its own people, it would never be called an internal problem. That was the way the world handled it in the 1970s. Governments could do what they wanted to their own people, which was absolutely ridiculous. And we ran a half-page ad in the Times saying that, don't call this an internal problem. The massacre of thousands of people is everybody's problem, everybody's problem. And so in those early days, one of the first things that happened, we were invited to a meeting in the basement of Peace News, where there were a number of people that had worked on Biafra, including an MP, Michael Barnes MP, and some Bengali students. And I believe the Bangladesh.
Yeah, Paul, I want to interrupt. That time, the Action Bangladesh already been formed, or?
I think it was formed then. I mean, the idea was there, but the formation was in that basement of Peace News. And very quickly, Marietta Prokope, who was the girlfriend of one of the Bengali activists, she offered her home, 34 Stratford Villas, to be the headquarters. And each night, the Bengali students and the English people that were concerned and involved, and how I wish I could meet some of those people, Pauline Godwin, Reba Fonseca, John Patrick O'Connor. These people, we don't know where they are. And then later, Freya Spreckley and Gordon Slaven.
Yes.
Anyway, I hope this program might get some of them to come out so we could meet them again. But I remember those evenings in Stratford Villas where we'd have the Bengali students, we'd be writing them the leaflets and getting everything ready for demonstrations, for rallies and so on. And in the corner, there was a record player. And one of the Bengali students had a record of Rabindranath Tagore's songs. And we used to listen to it every night. And there was one that we both liked, which we called the Jimmy Jim Jim song, Jimmy Jim Jim. It sounded like Jimmy Jim Jim, but I've heard since it's really Rimmy Rim Jim, Rimmy. It's the Shavana Rains hitting the windows or something. The man is thinking of his love and he can't get to it. And he's Dreamy Jim Jim, Rimmy Jim Jim. Beautiful. And I have loved, and we have loved Rabindranath Tagore's poems ever since, and his other writing. And I wanted to say this because I think this is important historically. I believe that Bengali and Italian are two of the most beautiful languages in the world. They are natural for music. So in Italy, anything becomes an opera. You write a sentence in Italian and it's immediately a song. For instance, do you know what the Italian is for Joe Green? Joseph Green. No, it's Giuseppe Verdi. Giuseppe Verdi. No, who could write a song, Joe Green? Joe Green, come home. No, Giuseppe Verdi. It's beautiful. And same with the Bengali. So it doesn't surprise me that Rabindranath Tagore's poems, he set 2,000 of them to music. And we only heard half a dozen and fell in love. But historically, it's interesting. You know what genocide is? Genocide is trying to wipe out a culture. You don't wipe out all the people. You're trying to wipe out the culture. And it's interesting. We discovered when we went to Sheikh Mujib's museum, where he was killed in Bangladesh, we saw the videotapes of his speeches. And one of them, which is very, very strong, is about the language movement. The thing that came before the killing, the actual killing, was the attempt to kill the language. And for me, that was such a horrific thing. Rabindranath Tagore has given such beautiful poetry, beautiful language, beautiful plays to the world. And it's that beautiful language was the first target of the Pakistanis. And it tells you what was going to happen. And then the next thing, of course, was killing the intellectuals in the brickyards, which we visited on our last visit. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we had plenty of demonstrations outside various missions that were supporting Pakistan. I remember standing all day by myself with a poster outside the Pakistan High Commission. And of course, the biggest one was 20,000 Bengalis in Trafalgar Square, and we marched past Downing Street and to Hyde Park, and that was a very, very powerful. And something you may not know, we got the permission of George Harrison, one of the Beatles, to play his song Bangladesh at that Trafalgar Square. I think it was the first time that it had been heard in England. You know, they had the Madison Square Gardens about the same time as this huge rally. Anyway, I want to turn over to Ellen now because something important happened here. I went into Action Bangladesh in the same way as we'd run the American Committee to Keep Biafra Alive. It was demonstrations, it was leaflets, it was advertisements, it was, demonstrating. And Ellen said, what did you say?
Well, everything Paul was doing, very, very important, was to affect change in the government. It was asking the government to recognize Bangladesh, which politically was absolutely necessary. But because of my involvement with Biafra, I didn't trust governments. I lost trust in governments, and with Vietnam and with Biafra. So I wanted to work directly to help people who needed help. And I was working at Peace News, which was in London by King's Cross. And Peace News published a weekly pacifist newspaper. And it was a group of radical pacifists, and they were a wonderful group. Anyway, so we decided to not put our hopes in what the governments might do, but let's get together people who actually want to do something on the ground. And that was the formation of Operation Omega. And in Peace News once again, and we worked with a wonderful guy, Prasad, Devi Prasad.
Devi Prasad, yes.
And he was the director of
War Resistance
International, and his office was right next to Peace News. And Roger Moody, an editor at Peace News, and I would have every lunchtime with Devi trying to figure out what we could do, what we could effect. And he was very helpful. He was a fabulous guy.
Direct action, but non-violent. Direct. So you drove the...
So,
you didn't drive. Go.
So anyway, we formed this Omega, Operation Omega. It attracted a ton of people who wanted to help. We had people drive a World War II ambulance to Calcutta, overground. They took some ferry from Turkey to Mumbai. It was crazy. We filled this World War II ambulance, which was quite large, with every medical supply we thought would be needed. It was ridiculous. And we sent them there but
Alan, I'll focus on that particular question very soon, because I will talk more about Action Bangladesh with Paul.
Yes.
And Operation Omega is you. You have traveled from Trafalgar Square to, oh my God, in the war zone with the medication and everything.
Yes.
Incredible. And you are in imprisonment for 2 months' time.
Yeah.
I know how Paul feels that time, how lonely he feels. What is the pain of that time, you know? Yeah, I want to ask you one thing. For Action Bangladesh time, can you remember a few of your fellow friends or Bengali friends? Bengali friends as well. Some of your friends we didn't find, honestly. We have numerous books come out. But as I mentioned before, for Marietta Prokope, I'm very interested to know about her. Can you tell us a few of the names, how you involved with or your interaction with Justice Abu Said Chaudhry that time, and you know the videos you have seen, Mannan Chaudhry, one of the member of steering committee of all action committees.
Yes.
Can you memorize those days for us, please?
Yes, well, we do remember Abu Said Chaudhry. He was such a gentleman, a real gentleman. And I got on very well with him. And Manju Chaudhry, I think, wasn't he the one that became a Supreme Court judge in Bangladesh?
Abu
became the president, right? But
no, Abed was the Supreme Court judge that we met in.
Yeah, we met a Supreme Court. Well, let me. Okay, we got to know several of the Bengali students, and they were in their 18, 19, 20. My close friend was Manju Chaudhry. But after we went to after the war was over, we lost track of each other, sadly. And it wasn't till many, many years later that we eventually went to Bangladesh again, I think 2013.
By accident, we were there for the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, 25th anniversary. Oh, yes, we were there for the 25th anniversary because we were working on a different issue. One of the issues that we've got involved with is waste. This is a book I've written on zero waste. And we were in India in 1996. And we took a side trip to Bangladesh, not realizing we were there on the anniversary, the 25th anniversary of the liberation. We went to a movie house there and saw a movie about the liberation. It was all very exciting. And during the day, we went to the Central Park in Dhaka, and I said, that's Tagore. The Tagore was being broadcast over the loudspeakers. We followed the loudspeakers to the center, and it was an all-day concert of Tagore's music. Everybody, soloists, choruses. Oh, it was wonderful, wonderful experience, and so unexpected. But going back to more recent times, 2013, when we went back again, there were all these students that we known 40 years ago, and all of a sudden they are there, and they are Supreme Court judges, leading journalists, photographers, Brak, Abed, the head of the Bangladesh Relief Action Committee, or Brak, and he was Marietta's boyfriend at the time, or fiance, or one of the two. So we were so excited, and it was difficult to contain one's emotions when you're meeting people you haven't met for 40 years, and there's several of them, and you're trying to remember which of those exciting young men were these people now in their 60s and 70s. So
and Farouk Chowdhury.
Farouk Chowdhury
we
was
never met up. With
we never met up with Farouk. He was another friend of ours, but all very exciting.
Okay, I want to ask you one thing about as we know, on 1st of August 1971, there was a massive concert was held in Madison Square in US, as well another big massive gathering held in London Trafalgar Square.
Yeah,
and in the history, we all know there is a majority of restaurants from Bangladesh for a particular syllabus.
We
all hotels, all restaurants been closed on Sunday, 1st of August.
Yeah.
And it's a massive gathering. You made the history. You too, we have seen on the stage as well. You are the key player behind the scene.
Yeah.
How it's happened? How the more than 200 MPs been involved with from House of Parliament to support they raised voice for stop genocide by the Pakistan, and how it's happened? How you manage this big gathering 1st of August?
Go on.
It was the wonderful reporting in the London Times, the wonderful reporting from people who were sending back their reports from Dhaka. And
it was one particular, there's a photographer with the Telegraph, I think, who hid. The Pakistan government told the press to get out. And one of them, a photographer and his assistant, they hid and stayed behind, and they took the photographs which went around the world. If they hadn't risked their lives to do that, it would have taken much longer.
And that's what got us involved.
Yeah.
It was those terrible reports, those true reports coming out of Dhaka.
Yeah.
It shocked everybody, and it got everybody. Everybody knew what was happening.
Yeah.
Due to very brave reporting.
Can you tell us more about the memories of particularly that day, 1st of August? It's significant for the history.
Leading up to that, to hold a rally which attracted eventually 20,000 people takes a lot of money. You have to have money for planning, for everything, posters, sound systems, transport, getting Bengalis from all over England to come to London on that particular day. Very expensive. And one of the ways we helped finance this was to go to all the Bengali restaurants all over England. People would drive out to Eastbourne and Brighton and Birmingham and around.
And they took me. There was a group of students in London who begged me to go with them down to Brighton and Hove, because they had a lot of Bengali restaurants, and they felt that it might help them rally some money. And so we went down, we had a ton of fun. And the restaurateurs, in fact, were quite generous.
Here's a trivial thing for you, a very trivial thing. I went to Cambridge University in 1959. And immediately outside our college, which was Downing College, was the New Bengal restaurant. We called it the Bengals. And we loved this restaurant. I tell you, I had never eaten curries before then. I'd never eaten Indian or Bengali curries. I love that food. I fell in love with it. And then when we had this campaign in 1971, the thing that kept me going was the food. I love the food. Every night, Manju Chowdhury would cook a different curry and tell me where it came from, it was wonderful. So it wasn't all sacrifice, you understand. It really was wonderful. What with the Rabindranath Tagore and the curry, you got two winning tickets there.
Yeah, one more thing. The two things happened in that day. One Bengali diplomat working in the Pakistan High Commission that time.
Yes.
Mohiuddin Ahmed.
Yes.
He on the big gathering, he announced that he left
Yes.
all his relation with the Pakistanis. So it was a very big slap on the.
A big story.
Yes.
A big story.
Yes.
Yeah. Very big.
Yeah. One more thing, we've seen that after the gathering, few of you gone to place an application, I think so.
Yeah.
To download it. Can you tell us that story? How you?
Well, yes, we delivered something that actually I had forgotten that. I'm sorry, I'd forgotten that. I saw myself on the picture, and I saw Downing Street. I thought, well, we obviously did do that. But I tell you, there was another story here. Is that this was an amazing rally. I mean, to get at that day, in those days, to get 20,000 people in Trafalgar Square on this issue was quite extraordinary. Yeah. And the BBC covered it very, very well. They did a very good coverage. It was top of the news. But ITN didn't touch it. And I was very angry. And 2 or 3 of us went to the ITN studios and said, why didn't you cover it? And he says, well, it's only a demonstration. I said, well, there's 20,000 people there. Well, I said, look, tell me something. I said, if 3 or 4 of those people walking down that street, the Whitehall, walking down, had broken away, run down Downing Street and thrown a brick through the window of 10 Downing Street, you would have covered that, right? He said, yes, we would have done it. I said, well, that's a terrible thing to put out to people. If you organize a rally for 20,000 people and you do it completely peacefully, you don't think it's news. But if 3 or 4 people throw a brick through the window, that's news. So we now know what we need to do to get ITN cameras to cover a story. He says, but it wouldn't do you any good. It wouldn't do any good if you get the story that way. But it was very, very frustrating, very frustrating.
Now I would like to come to Ellen.
Yes.
To know more about how the basic formation of Operation Omega.
Well, as I said, Peace News, that's where I was working, pacifist weekly newspaper. And we began publicizing Operation Omega, publicizing the fact that we needed help. We needed volunteers. We wanted to do XYZ. We wanted people's input. What could we do? What could we achieve? And it just simply attracted a ton of people.
Can I just interrupt a second? I should explain the Omega part of Operation Omega. It comes from the philosophy of Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Catholic intellectual rebel. He's been featured in Teilhard de Chardin. And basically, Teilhard de Chardin saw the human race coming together to what he calls the noose point, where everything would come together. There would be no barriers. And the way that Operation Omega used Teilhard de Chardin's philosophy is that no political barrier should separate people in desperate need from people that are wanting to help. And in this case, we knew that there were villagers in Bangladesh who were starving, who had no medicines and so on. These stories were coming out. And they had medicines and they had clothing and so on. And they didn't see the right of the Pakistan government to prevent them bringing this in. And so they took this ambulance. You take it from there. What did they do with the ambulance?
Right. And so we were very open. We told the Pakistani government exactly what we were going to do, that we weren't going to accept a border as legitimate that would stop people in need from people wanting to help. Yeah. And so the first few times we went, we knew it was all going to be a publicity stunt, but it would bring attention to the issue. And so we were stopped, and the Pakistani army made a big fuss, and et cetera, et cetera. But basically, that was to divert. We wanted to get inside the border. It was a very fluid border, very easy to do.
Now, I must interrupt this story because Ellen was in Calcutta, and she promised me when she went that she wouldn't be involved in any of the crossing of the borders and certainly not going into what was then East Pakistan. She was just going to do secretary work. So
Oh, Paul, everything I do is
yes,
secretary work.
yeah. That's what she said. Okay. Well, then after our political stuff, when Parliament went into recess in London, I decided that to get some legitimacy for our position, I would try to go to Bangladesh. I'd try to get in. So I went to Calcutta, and whilst we were there, we were approached by a Bengali Mukti Bahini, a captain in the Mukti Bahini army. Could we go to the relief agencies? Could Omega go to the relief agencies and get medical supplies? And he gave a list of medicines. And we said, yes, we would do that, but only if they allowed another fellow from Omega, Freya Spreckley, and myself to go in with them so that we could see these medicines being delivered. And what we wanted was to get into Bangladesh with cameras. We had an ITN camera, and I had a Canon still photo camera to get in and see what was happening. So I went in with that was a story in itself. Remind me to tell you before we finish this program, the captain that led this Mukti Bahini. We walked for 2 days and 2 nights, and then we went on a boat for 2 days and 2 nights, and finally we got to this village, which was then an island because it was during the monsoons, with the water everywhere. And we'd only been there a couple of nights when over the Pakistan radio, it said 2 Omega workers have been arrested in Pakistan. One of them is a woman. Oh my goodness, there I am. And it felt like the middle of Bangladesh. I think we're 80 miles. Oh, my wife's been arrested and of course, this is now problematic. I have to get out. We went out with 7 unarmed students who were going to become Mukti Bahini and an unarmed guide. We walked with the refugees for 7 days and 7 nights. Crossed the border into India. I'm speeding this all up. There were a few adventures along the way, including one. I must tell you this story.
Oh, God.
We're walking through this, but it was during the safe area, and a little kid getting in the fields going, ah, ah, ah. And I said, what is he saying? He said, madman. He was looking at Freya and ourselves. We were madmen. He'd never seen these 6'3" white, and our disguise was wearing a lungi. Can you believe this? A disguise which shows our knees were lily white, some disguise, but madman. Anyway, we get into India. I'm crossing the border and crossing the fields, and there were 2 people working in the fields, and they said, "Oh, Omega." And we said, "Yes." They said, "Oh," he says, "your people have been sentenced to 2 years in prison." Oh my goodness. So now I have to get back to London and back to the United States. But back to you.
You
now,
sure?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are there any more little stories? Okay.
Yes, I'm just paying you back for what you did to me. Go
on.
No, one thing I want to interrupt and want to know from Alan Connett. That's the Pakistani army. You're caught by Pakistani army, and then that took your wedding ring.
The what?
Your wedding ring being taken out.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is that scenario?
Explain how you got caught.
Okay, well, just to let you know, just to give you a tiny little bit, when we were in Calcutta, which was our home base, we were working very closely with the Gandhi Peace Foundation, and they were really rather terrific. They were very, very poor, but we would eat with them. We were very poor. We gave them a little money, and we had dinner with them every night. We'd be out in the field, we'd come back into Calcutta, and we would have our meal with the Gandhi Peace Foundation. They were very, very, very supportive of this effort. So the long and short was, someone came to me and said, was a priest actually, a Catholic priest, saying that the Catholic mission in Jessore really needed help and they needed supplies. And we said, well, that's what we're here for. We will do it. And I said, but we need to know what they need. And he said, I said, and we need a guide to take us there. It was monsoon season. The waters were very high. And we left at night, Freya Spreckley and myself and this Gordon Slavin and myself. And we took a boat late at night, left around 9 o'clock, and the boat arrived in Jessore just before sunrise. And we went to the Catholic mission, et cetera, but someone told the army we were there. They took us right, walked us into Jessore. We saw some very brave acts along the way by Bengalis. And we were given a trial, a 2-day trial, all in Bengali. And the end of the trial, I remember, and my Dewey Das, is that 2 years? I thought it meant 2 years. And yes, we got 2 years sentence. And then we were taken to the Jessore prison. I was put with the women. There was a group of women. Mostly they were, I think, we only had one woman who was a criminal. She killed her husband. She told me like that. So, but the other women were refugees who were stopped on their trek to the border. So there were a lot of women, different ages, and their babies. And I was there for 2 months. And at that time, the prison warden, he said he was going to take my ring to safeguard it. And fair enough. And so 2 months later, the week leading up to the end of the war was the taking of Jessore. That was the first thing. The Indian Army, they went into action. And the week before, they routed the Pakistanis out of Jessore with their MiGs. They came in for about 5 days previous, and they scooped down low on Jessore. I was certain we were going to get killed. And they were bombing certain areas. And the women, everybody was screaming. I truly felt that was it. It was going to be over. And then one morning we woke up in our cell and we heard Joy Bangla. Joy Bangla. And that, Joy Bangla, you wouldn't say that around a Pakistani army guy. And they had left during the night. And it was the beginning of the end of the war. It was when the Indians took Jessore. And it was very, very, very exciting. People were exploding with Joy Banglas, extremely happy.
Tell them about...
Alan,
yes.
I want to ask, so that is in 4th of December, if I am not wrong. 4th of December, 1971?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. One thing I need to know, how painful that time our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was in the imprisonment as well in Pakistan. And I just need to know how you spend your time in Pakistan, in the prison. You have no connection with Paul as well. You never, I don't think so. That time, you didn't find any clue what's happening around you.
Well,
what was happening inside?
I think I must say this because I'm very, very appreciative of it. The prison guards who came each day into the women's part with food, which was not good. The food was bad. Was bad food. They were very respectful and very professional. And I was very, very appreciative of that. Very, very appreciative. The women I was with, they didn't speak English and I didn't speak Bengali, but we got on to a certain amount. And there were a lot of children who just made the place much happier. And they were the ones who were teaching me Bengali. I had learned while I was there that I was pregnant. And it made me very happy. I was happy. And knowing I was pregnant. And so I was with the children and they were teaching me words and I felt, so it was okay, especially the professionality of the guards. I felt safe.
Wow.
And she found she was pregnant and the little boy in
Peter,
red. There we are.
Peter.
Yeah.
Peter.
Yeah.
Oh. So Paul, when you heard this good news that you are getting baby?
I didn't find out until she came back. When she arrived, the Indian captain or whatever drove Ellen to Major drove Ellen to Calcutta, and then Air India actually flew her free back to London, they unusually let my parents on the plane to see her en route. That's very rare, very rare indeed. Yeah. And then she flew into JFK Airport, where we met her along with all the TV stations. She was as thin as a rake. Thin, so thin.
Everybody was thin.
Everybody was very excited. And then when everybody had gone to bed, we were in Dumont, New Jersey, where her parents lived. And she said, "I'm pregnant." And I woke them up then and told them.
I remember my father, Paul ran downstairs. The good thing was Paul got to know my parents during this time. He stayed with them for those 2 months. And it was so good. They got to know him. He got to know my parents, who were marvelous, the best in the world. And when Paul said, "We're pregnant," my father just went, "Oh!" and turned around. Yeah. So it was very happy. It was very happy.
So we went back to London eventually, and we had our three boys, Peter, Martin, and Michael, in London, courtesy of the British National Health Service. And then eventually in 1979, we came back to the United States. And here we are now in Binghamton, New York, which is only 40 miles away from where I started in the United States, which was at Cornell University in 1966. So 54 years ago, I'm back almost where I started. We were actually in Ithaca yesterday to do some shopping.
Yeah, Paul and Ellen, we are getting a few comments from our audience around the world. As this time, who's are watching, everyone show you respect. Salute to you for your unconditional love and support for the independence of Bangladesh. On behalf of all our viewers, they put such a lovely comment. And one lady wrote down, we can see, listening to their experience. Thanks, Mama, for such an informative show. Yeah. And I have there's another thing interesting. Happy Mother's Day, Ellen Connett.
You know, there is another story here, which I'm going to let Ellen tell. And that was the railway. Oh, yeah. We were on the railway traveling from Toronto to Montreal. And Ellen, you take it from there.
When we were on the train, because we lived way upstate New York, right by the Canadian border. And so we were coming back from Canada, and we took the train, and there was a couple sitting across from us, and we happened to ask where they were from, and they said Bangladesh. And I don't know what ever possessed us, because we never spoke about this experience. I never spoke about it with my children until they were older, because I didn't want, people are very gossipy. And so they'll learn, oh, Ellen was in prison. It will be reduced to Ellen killed someone and was in prison. So I just didn't, I kept that away from them when they were young. But for some reason, we talked to this lovely couple on the train, and we exchanged stories, and we told them this crazy story of our involvement with Bangladesh. They were rather incredulous, but very nice. And when we got off the train, I said to Paul, they must think we're absolutely crazy. And we didn't think much more of it.
But it turned out to be very fortuitous, because Manju Chowdhury, one of my closest friends in this whole movement, he had been looking for us, and some of the other students been looking for us for several years, and they couldn't find us. If they'd searched Connett and waste, they wouldn't have found us. If they'd searched Connett and fluoride, incineration, fluoridation, they would have found us, because we've both been involved in those two campaigns, fighting incineration and fighting fluoridation. But they didn't. But this general, he turned out to be a general in the Bangladesh army. When he got home, he was a neighbor of Manju.
No, he met Mofadal. He went to Mofadal. And he said, I heard this crazy story.
And that's how they connected. And then this is a lovely story. Now, I must tell you this one. When we went back for the second time, the first time in 2013, the Liberation War Museum was a tiny little place. It was like 2 rooms in a private dwelling. That was the beginning of the Liberation
War Museum.
The Liberation War Museum. And Muffadu had asked me to bring all the artifacts that we had. We had lots of photographs I'd taken in Bangladesh, and letters and leaflets, you name it, advertisements, we had everything. Anyway, when we went back in 2019,
16.
No, it was
16.
It was last year. It was 2019,
Oh my
January.
God.
Yeah, that time you met with our the running prime minister, the daughter of Mujib.
Yes.
That time you have met with her.
Yes, that was what. But before that, Mofador took us to the museum, and I wasn't expecting huge building. I mean, it's massive, massive. And when we walked up the steps to the museum, there was a display outside, and it was all our photographs of Operation Omega, photographs of the demonstrations in London, the photographs I'd taken of the Mukti Bahini going into Bangladesh, and then that was very exciting. I said, "Oh, said Lord Abu Chowdhury, yeah, that was Saeed Chowdhury." And then that was something. At this point, Mofadul Haq comes up to us and says, "We have a surprise for you." And he brings this fellow forward. He's walking with the stick. He's 80 years old, and he is the captain who led the Mukti Bahini in that night to Bangladesh with the 150 Mukti Bahini. I remember I was there, yeah.
You were there.
So I remembered him, this young, handsome, captain, major, whatever he was, but I hadn't seen him for X number of years. I mean, since 71. So that was very exciting and very moving. And then he said, "I've got someone else for you to meet." And it was this general that we had met on the train, which had put all the pieces together. So that was exciting too.
Paul and Alan, we got a comments from the lady involved with the Liberation War Museum.
Yeah, very good.
Oh,
Amena, thank you, Alan and Paul, for mentioning Liberation War Museum and our trustee Mofidul Haq.
Wonderful.
For a kind of from my side, for last 12 years, honestly, I'm just looking around to finding out all the facts and finding all the people so involved with this movement in back 1971. I am everywhere. I find some name from Justice Abu Said Choudhury books and other places. They're Paul and Alan Connett. Oh my God! I have sent some emails in different addresses I got, but thanks to Liberation War Museum last more than a decade, as a newcomer, as a young Bangladeshi, Mr. Mofidul Haq and his team, they gave me a tremendous support in Bangladesh as well. And again, thanks to that institution, they're supporting all the young. If someone is agreed to research on that particular subject, our historical movement around the world. Thank you, Amena, for your beautiful comments. I want to show you one thing right now, and I want to know behind the story. আপনারা যারা দেখছেন তাদেরকে এখন আমরা একটা ছবি দেখাতে চাই, যে ছবির মানুষটি হচ্ছে পিটার উইলিয়াম মুজিব কনেট, তাদের প্রথম সন্তান। আমরা ছবিটি দেখার পর আবার কথায় ফিরে আসবো।
Oh, these are the pictures maybe Peter sent.
Yeah. Let's have a look. Oh, there we are. Yes, this is Peter today. Peter's in the center, of course. That's his wife, Alla. She's Russian, and she's a great artist. And Yuri is her first son from a previous marriage. And there are our two little grandchildren, Aurora, the girl, and Andre, the boy.
Yeah.
So that's Peter today. And of course, we called him, when he was born in London, Peter William Mujib Connett, after Sheikh Mujib. Because he was conceived in Jessore prison.
No, not Jessore, in Calcutta.
Yeah, he was conceived in Calcutta, but he emerged. You first read, so knew he was around in Jessore prison.
Dear viewers and the Paul and Alan, thanks for your excellent support. And one thing, we are actually waiting for to connect with Peter William Mujib Connett, but because of his another appointment, we missed him. It's really emerging to find you put your son's name with Mujib.
Well, I met Sheikh Mujib after the war was over.
Yeah, I'm going to that question. I'm just waiting for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I met him in his whatever it is, palace or whatever.
Tell him that you went over for.
Yes, it was. We went over a mission of reconciliation. It was organized by Right Honourable John Ennals, who was the health minister in the Labour government. And it was a mission of reconciliation, a Conservative MP, a Labour MP, a Bengali, a Bihari. We went to Pakistan, and David spoke with Bhutto. Then we went to Delhi and spoke to...
Because they had so many prisoners.
Yeah, the whole thing was that there were trapped populations. There were Bengalis trapped in Islamabad and so on. And then, of course, the Biharis were trapped, who had sided with the Urdu-speaking, sided with the Pakistan army. They were in real danger. So they were rounded up to protect them because the people were so angry. But I had the joy of meeting Sheikh Mujib. And during this conversation, I told him that we had named our son Peter William Mujib, and he was so pleased. And I remember him holding my hand as we walked down from his house, down a long path to the front gate. And he held my hand all the way down.
In Dhaka.
In Dhaka, this was. And I was just trying to, please don't let these people come to any harm. That was our job. Don't let them come to any harm. And, he could have taken it the wrong way, meaning that I thought he was not, that he wasn't on our side on this. He was on our side. And they weren't killed. So that was how I remember Sheikh Mujib. And then, of course, in this last visit, we actually met his daughter, who's only alive because when they killed him and all his they killed all him and all his family members in the museum that we visited in his house, except this one daughter, I think, was in Germany at the time. And now she is the prime minister. What a lovely person.
Yes, yes.
And also what a wonderful story, with all this, with all this hatred, religious hatred going on around the world. She and hers are absolutely determined to keep Bangladesh secular, to have all religious groups secular and have women playing prominent roles and making sure that women get educated and so on. It's such a wonderful example that Bangladesh is setting to the world.
And she's very keen on education.
Yeah, very keen, yeah. And again, the thing that's moved me about the War Museum, it isn't just about Bangladesh in the past. It is about making sure that we don't get future genocides, that people should learn from this history. And this is a place where people can get educated about what it means when you try to kill off a people, when you have to destroy a culture, destroy a language. It's all there. It's embedded in those bricks and mortar in that museum.
But I think Bangladesh is extremely unusual in one respect. Their history, their genesis is owned by everyone throughout the country. Everybody knows their story. It's very, very moving. Wherever we went, people lost members of their family in that horrible war. And people come together. You're one country when you speak of that war.
Yeah.
People are absolutely together.
And for me, Rabindranath Tagore has always been the metaphor. It's just what it stands for. The elimination of the language would have eliminated Tagore from the culture, from the history. And there's a wonderful book about Tagore, which I'd like to just share with your readers.
There's around a few thousand.
Rabindranath Tagore, one of many, many. It's called The Myriad-Minded Man. It's written by two authors. It's an absolutely wonderful book. And I want to tell you one story which tells you how culture, it's culture which is the gift of art to the world. And the artists played a very prominent role in the liberation of Bangladesh, the singers and the artists. And of course, Rabindranath Tagore's songs, there. But in this story, it is a story from World War I, where a Gurkha soldier, an Indian soldier, it was fighting on the side of the British. And he was captured and he was seriously wounded. And they took him to the hospital and they were going to operate on him. But he was petrified. He was absolutely petrified. This is the enemy. This surgeon was coming towards him with a knife. He was petrified. And the German surgeon knew he had to find a way to calm this man down. And this is what he did. He leant down and whispered into his ear, Rabindranath Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. So these may have been the only words that he knew in Indian to communicate to this petrified Indian soldier. And he knew that anybody that said Rabindranath Tagore was not going to hurt you. He wasn't going to hurt you. That is the power of language. And ultimately, when all the politicians have died, the artists will still be there. The writers will still be there. The music will still be, we'll still be listening to the music. It will go on and on and on. That's what culture means to the world. And that's what was the Pakistanis were trying to eliminate back in 1971, but they weren't successful, thank God.
Yeah, it's a brilliant conversation with you, Paul and Ellen. And really, so thankful to you. And all of our viewers, they keep their comments, they congratulate you, and they respect your support you couple made in back 1971 for the independence of Bangladesh. And it's really, really incredible to have you in our show. And one thing, as I spoken with Paul a couple of before the Corona time arrived, and I have a plan to work with you in London, in Trafalgar, and other places.
Yes.
But it's really, really is it's not in our hand. And one thing in the final, we have just only 4 minutes in our hand right now, and I'm requesting you and seeking support from you. It's one of my book based on this particular subject, London 71.
Yes.
I focus on London because all our around the people know about London. It's UK. The significant role all politicians, MPs, social workers, Bengali peoples, non-Bengali peoples, students. Yeah, UK made a tremendous support in that time, and so many of untold story not been explored yet, honestly. So I will seek your help. Always I knock in your door.
Yes, I'll be delighted to do that. But before, we've only got a few minutes left. I want to pay homage to one absolutely
2 minutes to two and a half minutes in your hand.
Okay. Well, I'd like to pay homage to Marietta Prokope, because if it hadn't been for Prokope, we wouldn't have had the support in those early crucial days. She gave us a bed, a room to stay. She gave us an office. She gave us her moral support. She was a wonderful young woman. She was full of life, full of energy. She was absolutely dedicated to this cause. And if we hadn't had Marietta, it would have been half or only a quarter of the campaign. And it's the saddest thing out of all of this. We won Bangladesh, but Marietta took her own life. And that was, I mean, talk about a very, very sad thing. But otherwise, it was everything was wonderful about that whole experience. And it was so good to win. We won that campaign.
I would just like to say just one thing, two things. One, we're only two of many people
Absolutely.
in the United Kingdom. There was so many people, all different ages, all different occupations, who wanted to help.
Yeah.
Honest to God, I'm telling you the truth. Bengalis should know this. There were hundreds and hundreds of people who were willing to go and help. Actually, one of the members of the team that went to Calcutta was a policeman.
Yeah.
We had everybody. And so we're only two of a ton of people. As for Marietta, she had no idea how much people loved her.
No, no.
You know, no one ever said that. We
No.
just assumed she knew that.
She was such a happy person. It
Yes,
was difficult
yes,
to know
yeah,
that
yeah,
underneath
yeah,
there was a
yeah.
lot of depression,
Yeah.
a lot of self-doubt.
She was accomplished. She
Yeah.
was bright. She was pretty. She had everything going for her.
Yeah.
It was the last thing anybody would have considered here. And she did a wonderful job on this issue.
And Ellen is right. When these issues break, whether it's Biafra, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Vietnam, or whatever it is, there are literally hundreds and thousands of people that are reading the newspapers, watching the television. They see these dreadful images, and they want to help. They want to help. They don't know what to do. And that's when little groups like Action Bangladesh or Operation Omega or American Committee to Keep Biafra Alive or whatever it is, when they emerge in the public view, then these people know where to go. So some people get, some people are noticed. Some people with a big mouth are noticed or courageous. They get noticed, but really we represent hundreds of thousands of other people who had nothing but goodwill for Bangladesh.
It's absolutely,
and it continues, and it continues.
Thank you.
Paul and Ellen, from my viewers and as the son of Bangladesh and all the people from Bangladesh on behalf, say you salute, wish you good health, and
Joy Bangla!
Joy Bangla after
Joy Bangla!
Joy Bangla, and see you soon again. Thanks for your support, and we'll meet very soon. Thanks for your time, Ellen and Paul. Thank you a lot. Joy Bangla.
Joy Bangla. Okay.
এতক্ষণ আপনারা যারা দাস এন্ড কোঙেরই আজকের আলাপচারিতাটা দেখছিলেন তাদেরকে কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাচ্ছি আমাদের সাথে যুক্ত হওয়ার জন্য। আমরা জানি যে 1971 সালে বাংলাদেশের পাশাপাশি পৃথিবীর বিভিন্ন দেশে প্রবাসী বাঙালিরা, আপনার আমার মতো অনেক বাঙালিরা ঝাঁপিয়ে পড়েছিলেন এবং দাঁড়িয়েছিলেন বাংলাদেশের স্বাধীনতার সমর্থনে, প্রতিবাদ জানিয়েছিলেন পাকিস্তানের এই গণহত্যার বিরুদ্ধে। পল এবং এলেন কোনেট, এই ব্রিটিশ দম্পতি, তার মতো অনেকেই এগিয়ে আসছেন। শুধু সেটি লন্ডনে হয়েছে সেটি কিন্তু নয়, অস্ট্রেলিয়াতে, ইউএসএ তে, প্যারিসে, লুক্সেমবার্গে, so many places. So thanks for joining with us, and from on behalf of Dash and Kong, we just requesting one thing. We are trying our level best to focus on two things. One, in the tremendous history of Bangladesh Liberation War history around the world. As well, we'll focus on the very good stories, the encouraging story for young generation from Bangladeshis. And if you are happy with us, if you have any comments or anything else, we are requesting you to subscribe on YouTube Dash and Co channel. As well, you can stay connected with us on the Facebook page Dash and Co. তো আপনাদের সবাইকে আবারও শুভেচ্ছা, অভিনন্দন। এই করোনা কালে আপনারা সবাই বাড়িতে থাকবেন, ভালো থাকবেন। ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে।